Billionaire mocked a black nurse asking advice for his sick daughter, until she said something that broke him. Rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows of the hospital suite, its rhythmic patter mixing with the steady pulse of the heart monitor. The room was sleek, private, and filled with the quiet hum of expensive machines. Every surface gleamed, except for the small hand lying limp on the white sheet. Ethan Carter stood beside the bed, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the pale face of his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. The monitors blinked and beeped like a foreign language he couldn't decipher. For a man who built empires out of code and strategy, the silence of helplessness was unbearable. He had always believed there was nothing he couldn't buy. Power, expertise, loyalty, but now, standing in the dim glow of sterile light, all his money felt useless. He checked his phone again, scrolling through a list of specialists he'd already called. None had answers, only clinical phrases, complications, unclear response, critical observation, words that sounded efficient but meant nothing to a father watching his child fade. His reflection in the window looked hollow, a billionaire with everything except the one thing that mattered. The door opened softly. A nurse entered, her scrubs a deep navy that contrasted the brightness of the room. She moved with quiet assurance, her presence calm and grounded. Her name tag read Maya Thompson, RN. She was young, no older than her late 20s, black, composed, and focused. Ethan didn't acknowledge her at first. He was still pacing, phone pressed to his ear, giving clipped instructions to an assistant about transferring funds for a specialist on standby. "Mr. Carter," Maya said gently, checking the IV line. "She's resting. The sedative's working." He glanced at her briefly, irritation in his eyes. "Resting? She's barely breathing," he snapped. "Do you even know what she needs?" The question came out sharper than he intended, dripping with the impatience of a man too accustomed to control. Maya didn't flinch. She finished noting Lily's vitals before turning to him fully, her expression steady. "Yes," she said softly. "She needs her father to stop pretending he's made of steel." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Maya nodded toward the phone in his hand. "Put that down," she said quietly, almost like a mother instructing a frightened child. "She doesn't need a billionaire right now. She needs her dad. Hold her hand. Talk to her." For a moment, the air between them tightened. No one spoke to Ethan Carter like that. But there was something in her tone, not defiance, but truth, that disarmed him completely. He looked back at Lily. Her small face was pale, lips barely moving with each shallow breath. The phone felt heavy in his hand. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he lowered it onto the side table. Maya stepped back, giving him space. "You can't fix this with money," she said, her voice softer now. "But love. Love gives her something no doctor can." Ethan hesitated, his throat tight. Then, awkwardly, he reached out and took Lily's hand. Her skin was warm, fragile. He'd forgotten how small her fingers were, how they used to wrap around his when she was a toddler. He whispered, "Hey, baby girl," the words catching on his breath. And then it happened. A faint twitch, a small squeeze. Barely there, but real. Maya smiled, quiet and knowing. "See?" she murmured. She just needed her dad. Ethan stared at his daughter, a tear slipping down his cheek before he could stop it. The world outside the glass disappeared. The empire, the stocks, the meetings. All that remained was the soft hum of the machines, the sound of rain, and the fragile heartbeat of a love he'd almost forgotten how to show. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter felt something stronger than power. He felt human. Morning light filtered through the blinds, slicing pale lines across the hospital floor. The quiet hum of machines filled the suite as a group of doctors stood near the door, murmuring over Lily's latest test results. Ethan hovered beside them, his designer suit wrinkled, his expression carved from impatience. "Whatever she needs, do it," he said, voice clipped, commanding. "Money isn't a problem." The lead physician shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Carter, these procedures take time. We're already using the best resources. Then use better ones," Ethan cut in. "Call whoever you have to. I'll pay whatever it costs. I want results." His tone cracked like a whip. The doctors exchanged looks before quietly leaving, their polite assurances trailing into silence. Ethan turned back toward the bed, frustration tightening his jaw. Lily's tiny frame seemed swallowed by the white sheets. Each beep of the monitor was a reminder of everything he couldn't control. Maya entered moments later with a fresh chart in hand, her movements calm and deliberate. She checked the IV, adjusted Lily's pillow, and noted Ethan's clenched fists. "You can't rush healing," she said gently without looking at him. Ethan exhaled sharply. "That's easy for you to say. You don't understand what it's like to have everything at stake." Maya glanced up. "You mean to have everything money can buy?" He bristled. "You think I'm some spoiled billionaire who doesn't care? My daughter is dying in front of me." "I know," Maya said softly. "And that's why you have to stop fighting everyone trying to help her." Her calmness infuriated him. "Do you even know what real pressure feels like?" He snapped. "Deadlines, decisions that affect thousands of people." She set the chart down, meeting his gaze evenly. "Pressure? I buried my little brother when I was 17, she said quietly. "Leukemia. We couldn't afford the treatments you can buy without blinking. I worked nights to keep my mother fed. So yes, Mr. Carter, I know pressure. I also know that no amount of money makes you less human when someone you love is slipping away." The words hit him like a blow he didn't see coming. He looked away, guilt pricking at the back of his throat. Maya turned back to Lily, smoothing the girl's hair with practiced tenderness. "You treat her like she's your own," he said after a moment, his voice softer. "She reminds me of him," Maya replied. Same laugh. Same stubborn little spirit. She smiled faintly, glancing at the child. "He used to say I made him brave. Maybe I just made him feel safe." Ethan fell silent. He hadn't made anyone feel safe in years. After his wife, Anna, died in a car accident 3 years ago, he'd poured his grief into work, building, expanding, conquering. Every deal, every success was a wall against pain. Affection had felt weak. Control was easier. But here, in this sterile room, control was useless. He stared at Maya again, her focus unshaken even under his scrutiny. There was something about her steadiness that both irritated and intrigued him. She didn't defer to his power, didn't flinch at his arrogance. She simply was, grounded, compassionate, real. When Lily stirred slightly, Maya leaned over, whispering softly, "Good morning." "Sunshine." The little girl's eyelids fluttered, and for a fleeting second, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't seen that in weeks. "She responds to your voice," he said quietly, almost to himself. Maya smiled without looking up. "Children know who's safe," she murmured. The truth in her words landed heavily. For the first time, Ethan realized his daughter trusted the nurse more than she trusted him. It stung, but underneath the sting was something else. Admiration. As the day waned, Maya adjusted the blinds, letting warm sunlight spill across the bed. Ethan watched her from the corner, his pride eroding with every small act of grace she showed. She wasn't just caring for his daughter. She was teaching him, without ever meaning to, what care really looked like. When she finally turned to leave, Ethan caught himself saying, "Thank you." Maya paused in the doorway, surprise flickering in her eyes. "You're welcome, Mr. Carter." After she was gone, the room felt strangely quieter, emptier, but in a way that made Ethan realize something had shifted. For the first time in years, his armor had cracked. And in the reflection of the glass, he didn't see a billionaire anymore. He saw a father, humbled and unsure, staring at the one person who'd dared to challenge the only language he'd ever known, power. The hospital at night had a different kind of silence. Soft, heavy, almost sacred. The hum of machines and the faint echo of footsteps along the linoleum halls were the only sounds left when visiting hours ended. Ethan sat alone in the cafeteria, a half-empty cup of coffee cooling in front of him. His tailored suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked like a man who had spent years commanding rooms yet couldn't command peace within himself. From his corner table, he watched as Maya spoke gently with an older couple near the vending machines. The man was trembling, his wife in tears, but Maya placed a reassuring hand on the woman's shoulder, speaking softly, too quiet to hear, but enough to see the calm ripple through them. She smiled, listened, waited. Her patience was steady, her compassion effortless. Ethan couldn't remember the last time someone had comforted him like that, or the last time he had comforted anyone. Something about her, her quiet strength, The way she anchored people in chaos reminded him of Anna. His late wife had been that way too. She'd believed in listening before speaking, in slowing down before acting. Be present, she used to tell him, when he'd rush through dinners to answer work calls, when he'd miss bedtime stories for board meetings. He used to laugh and promise he'd slow down after the next deal. Now there were no more deals left that mattered. Maya finished with the couple and turned toward him. Their eyes met briefly, and though he tried to look away, she walked over. "You should get some rest," she said. Her tone gentle but firm. "I can't," he admitted, staring at the rain sliding down the window. "I don't know how to sit still anymore." Maya sat across from him, folding her hands. "You think movement means progress. Sometimes stillness is the only thing that heals." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "You sound like my wife." Maya smiled faintly. "She must have been a wise woman." "She was," he said quietly. "And I didn't listen to her either." He stared into his coffee. "I built everything I thought would protect her and Lily. Money, security, control. But when she got sick," his voice caught, the memory still sharp, "all the control in the world couldn't save her. I just watched her slip away." Maya's gaze softened. "You think strength is control," she said. "But real strength is surrender, knowing when to stop fighting and start feeling." The words landed deep, deeper than he wanted to admit. For so long, Ethan had equated surrender with weakness. But as he sat there, exhausted and hollow, he realized maybe surrender was the only way left to truly love what remained. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to her. "I don't even know where to start." Maya leaned back in her chair, her eyes kind. "Start with Lily. Talk to her. Read to her. She can still hear you." "She's unconscious," he said, shaking his head. "I don't want to remind myself she can't respond." "You won't remind yourself," Maya replied softly. "You'll remind her she's not alone." Later that night, Ethan returned to the room. The lights were dimmed, machines steady in their rhythm. He stood beside the bed, uncertain, awkward, feeling like a stranger in his own child's life. Then he reached for a small book Maya had left on the nightstand, a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, Lily's favorite. He opened it, cleared his throat, and began to read. His voice was rough at first, uneven, the words stumbling through the air. But as he continued, the cadence smoothed. His tone softened, shaped by memory and longing. He read about friendship, sacrifice, love that endures, and somewhere in the middle of a paragraph, his voice broke. He glanced at Lily. Her eyes were still closed, but a faint flicker crossed her lips, a ghost of a smile, maybe a dream. He couldn't tell. In that moment, the sterile beeping of machines faded beneath the rhythm of his words. His voice filled the room, warm and alive, weaving through the quiet like a promise. Maya watched from the doorway, unseen, a small smile curving her lips. For the first time in years, love, not fear, not control, echoed from Ethan Carter's voice, and in that fragile space between heartbeats and hope, the wall around him finally began to crack. The storm hit just before dawn. Lightning flashed beyond the hospital windows, thunder rolling deep through the building as if echoing Ethan's own restless heartbeat. He had barely slept. Every time Lily's monitor beeped, his body tensed, waiting for something to go wrong. By the time Maya returned for her shift, exhaustion had carved dark lines beneath his eyes. She smiled softly when she entered, her calm presence instantly softening the air. But before she could speak, a shrill alarm cut through the room. Lily's monitor flared red. Her oxygen levels dropped. Nurses rushed in, voices clipped and urgent. Ethan froze, the world narrowing to the sound of those rapid, desperate beeps. "What's happening?" he barked, stepping forward. "She's having trouble breathing," one of the nurses said. "We're adjusting her ventilator." "Adjusting?" Ethan's voice rose. "You call that adjusting? She's fighting for her life." He turned to Maya, anger and terror fusing into something wild. "You said she was stable. What did you miss? What aren't you doing?" Maya's face remained composed even as his words lashed through the air. "Mr. Carter, please, don't tell me to calm down," he shouted, pacing in front of the bed. "You're supposed to know what to do. You said she needed love, not money. Well, where's the miracle now?" The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, but Maya raised a hand, signaling them to step back. She took one step closer to him, her voice low, firm, and unwavering. "You're not angry at me," she said, meeting his eyes. "You're terrified you can't buy her life." The words struck him like a blow to the chest. For a moment he simply stared at her, breathing hard, rage flickering into disbelief. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice quieter now but trembling. "I said," she repeated gently, "that this isn't about me, or the doctors, or the hospital. You're angry because you've run out of ways to fix it with power. Because for once in your life, you can't pay the pain away." He blinked, swallowing hard but couldn't find words. The fight drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. Maya turned back to the bed, checking Lily's monitors with practiced precision. Her movements were calm, deliberate. The crisis passed as quickly as it had come. The machine steadied, the numbers climbed back up. Ethan sank into the chair by the wall, head in his hands. The thunder outside rolled on, softer now. Maya glanced at him once before leaving quietly, giving him the space she knew he needed. Alone, the room felt too large. The silence pressed against him, filling every crack that anger had left behind. He stared at Lily, so small, so still, and for the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. He had spent a lifetime commanding people, building things, controlling outcomes. But here, none of that mattered. His daughter didn't need a billionaire. She needed her father. Ethan bowed his head, his hands trembling. The words came out haltingly, foreign to him. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking. "Please don't take her. I'll do anything, just let her stay." He wasn't even sure who he was talking to. God, fate, the universe. But it didn't matter. It was the first honest thing he had said in years. A single tear fell, landing on Lily's small hand. For a heartbeat, he thought he imagined it, but the monitor gave a soft, steady beep, then another. Her breathing eased, Ethan exhaled, shaking, as if that fragile sound had pulled him back from the edge. Maya stood silently at the doorway, having returned just in time to see him bent over the bed, shoulders shaking. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She knew what was happening. Not a miracle, not yet, but a change. The steel walls around his heart were cracking, and through the break, something sacred was finally shining through. As lightning flared one last time across the window, Maya turned away quietly, leaving him to his prayer and the rhythmic, hopeful sound of his daughter's heart finding its strength again. Morning sunlight spilled into the room, painting the walls in soft gold. The air no longer felt suffocating. Machines still hummed, but their rhythm had changed. Less ominous, more steady. For the first time, hope didn't feel like a distant concept. It lingered in the quiet space between each beep of Lily's monitor. Ethan sat at his daughter's bedside, the phone that once never left his hand now forgotten on a chair. His posture was different, shoulders relaxed, eyes gentler. When Maya entered with her usual clipboard, he didn't bark orders or demand updates. Instead, he looked up and asked, almost shyly, "How's she doing this morning?" Maya smiled. "Better. Her oxygen levels are improving. Slowly, but surely." He nodded, the relief visible in the way his chest rose and fell. "What else can I do to help?" It was a small question, but one that meant everything. Maya set the clipboard aside and said, "Talk to her. She knows your voice now. And when you touch her hand, keep it steady. Kids feel their parents' fear more than we realize." He listened intently, following her instructions. When Lily's eyelids fluttered at his touch, a small, proud smile spread across his face. "She's responding," he said softly, looking to Maya. "She always was," Maya replied. "You just weren't looking before." Over the next few days, Ethan began asking, not ordering. He wanted to understand how everything worked, what each tube did, why certain readings mattered, how Maya seemed to sense what Lily needed before anyone else did. During one quiet afternoon, as the rain drizzled outside, Maya shared pieces of her life between checkups. "I almost didn't finish nursing school," she said, adjusting Lily's blanket. "My mom worked 2 jobs so I could stay in the program. There were professors who didn't think I belonged there. Said I was too emotional for medicine." Ethan frowned. "They actually said that?" Maya chuckled softly. "More than once. But my mom told me that being emotional didn't make me weak. It made me human. She said, people don't need perfect nurses. They need ones who care. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. She sounds like someone who raised a good fighter. She raised a believer, Maya said, eyes softening. When my brother died, I thought faith was just words. But she showed me that it's the action behind the words that matters. How you love, how you help. Ethan was silent for a moment, her words sinking in. I lost faith a long time ago, he admitted quietly. After my wife died, I couldn't see the point in believing anything. I just built walls instead. Maya looked at him with gentle honesty. Then maybe this is how you start believing again. Not in something above you, but in what's right in front of you. That evening, they sat in the staff lounge with coffee cups warming their hands. The conversation was easy, unforced. They talked about Lily, about work, about the strange balance between hope and heartbreak that hospitals always held. Maya laughed at one of his stories about Lily's mischievous kindergarten antics. She sounds like she keeps you on your toes, she said. She's everything I'm not, Ethan admitted with a fond smile. Brave without trying, Maya tilted her head. You're learning bravery too, just a different kind. Their connection deepened not through grand gestures but through shared silences, through the kind of trust that doesn't need words. There was no romance, only mutual restoration. Two people who had both lost something finding pieces of themselves in each other's strength. One evening, Ethan came into the room carrying a small, well-worn book, Charlotte's Web, the same one he had read during his first moment of surrender. Her favorite, he said with a smile. Maya stood by quietly as he opened it, his voice steady and full. Lily's fingers twitched around his, her breathing calm. He read every line as though weaving magic through the air, his tone tender, patient, and warm. Maya felt her throat tighten. Watching him now, she realized the transformation was complete, not in his wealth, but in his heart. He wasn't just a man with power anymore. He was a father who had learned to listen, to love without control. When he finished the story, Lily stirred softly, her lips parting in a faint whisper. "Daddy." Ethan froze, eyes wide. Then he leaned forward, tears blurring his vision. "I'm right here, baby." Maya quietly turned away, her smile trembling with emotion. She knew this moment would stay with him forever. The sound of his daughter's voice answering his own. Proof that courage and love could do what money never could. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan Carter understood. It wasn't the nurse who had healed his child. It was the kindness she had taught him to find again. It happened without warning. One moment, the hospital room was peaceful. The faint hum of monitors, the rhythmic rise and fall of Lily's breathing filling the air, and the next, chaos erupted. The heart monitor screamed. Nurses flooded in. One of the doctors shouted for suction, another for the crash cart. Tubes tangled, alarms blared, and Ethan's world collapsed into noise and terror. He stood frozen at first, unable to move. Then panic surged through him. "What's happening?" he shouted, his voice breaking. "She was fine. You said she was getting better." "Her oxygen's crashing," one of the doctors called out. "We need to intubate now." Ethan's throat closed. He stumbled forward, gripping the edge of the bed, helpless as his daughter's small body trembled beneath a tangle of wires. "Do something. Please, do anything." He turned to the team, his voice desperate, raw. "Whatever it costs, I'll pay it." "Just save her!" No one answered him. They were too busy fighting to keep Lily breathing. The room spun. He felt the old panic rising, clawing through his chest. He wanted to throw money at the air, to fix it with force, with power, but none of it mattered. Through the blur of motion, a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Ethan." He turned. Maya was there, calm in the chaos, her eyes locked on his. She stepped toward him, her hand steady, her tone firm but gentle. "Look at me," she said. He tried to speak, but no words came. "Breathe," she whispered, taking both his trembling hands in hers. Her grip was warm, grounding. "She needs you calm." Her words sank through the storm. For a moment, everything slowed. The alarms, the shouts, even his panic. He forced himself to match her breathing, each inhale shaky, each exhale steadier than the last. "Tell me what to do," he said finally, voice hoarse. "Talk to her," Maya said. "Let her know you're here, that she's safe." Ethan moved to the bedside, tears blurring his vision. "Lily," he whispered, voice trembling. "Daddy's right here, sweetheart. You're safe. You're not alone." As he spoke, Maya worked beside the doctors, helping to adjust the tubing, guiding one nurse's hands. She gave quiet instructions, her calm presence infecting everyone around her. Slowly, the monitors began to stabilize. The shrill alarms softened, the lines on the screen smoothing out. Minutes felt like hours. Then one of the doctors exhaled in relief. "We've got her," he said. "She's stabilizing." The chaos ebbed as quickly as it had come. The medical team withdrew, leaving behind silence, broken only by the faint, steady beeping of the heart monitor. Ethan slumped into the chair beside the bed, his hands still shaking. Maya stood across from him, her expression soft but exhausted. He looked up at her, eyes red, voice cracking. "You saved both of us tonight," he said. She shook her head. "No, Ethan, you did that. You stayed. You didn't run from the fear this time." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking deep. "I couldn't have done it without you." Maya smiled, small but genuine. "That's the point. None of us can do it alone." He turned back to Lily, brushing her hair from her forehead. The little girl's chest rose and fell evenly now, her color returning bit by bit. Ethan took her hand gently, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world, because it was. In that moment, the truth settled into him completely. Power wasn't in wealth or control or the illusion of certainty. It was in grace. The quiet courage to stay, to breathe, to love through fear. Maya stood at the doorway, watching him whisper softly to his daughter. She knew this was no longer the same man who had once mocked her calmness. The billionaire who had believed money ruled everything had finally learned the one lesson only heartbreak could teach, that love, in all its fragile power, was the greatest strength of all. Weeks passed, and the world inside the hospital began to bloom again. Spring sunlight spilled through the tall windows, filling the once shadowed room with warmth and color. Lily was sitting up now, her small legs tucked beneath a blanket, a coloring book spread across her lap. The monitors that once dictated every heartbeat now served as quiet background music to the sound of crayons scratching paper. Maya stood by the window, chart in hand, watching the little girl hum softly to herself. Ethan sat beside the bed, helping Lily choose colors for the flowers she was drawing. He had traded his suits for a simple gray sweater, his hair slightly unkempt. There was peace in his eyes now, something softer, something that had been missing for years. "Daddy," Lily said, holding up her drawing proudly, "does this flower look like the ones in Grandma's garden?" Ethan smiled. "Even better. You've got her touch." Maya's heart warmed at the sight. It had been weeks since Lily's crisis, and every small improvement felt like a miracle. But it also meant her time here was ending. She'd just received notice of reassignment to another department, another family that would need her calm hands and quiet strength. She turned to go over Lily's latest chart, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "You're leaving soon," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded, her smile gentle but tinged with sadness. "They're short-staffed in Pediatrics West. My next patient's waiting for me." Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "You've done more than anyone here. For her, for me." Maya shook her head. "I just did my job." He leaned forward. "No, Maya, you did more than that. You reminded me what it means to actually be here, to be a father." For a moment, their eyes met. Two people from different worlds who had met at the crossroads of pain and grace. Later that week, the hospital arranged a small ceremony in the garden courtyard. Nurses, doctors, and a few families gathered beneath the early afternoon sun to honor Maya for her compassion and dedication. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze, and a small banner read, "Thank you, Nurse Thompson, a heart that heals." Ethan stood beside the podium, his posture humble, a simple speech folded in his hand. When it was his turn to speak, the crowd quieted. "I used to think success meant control," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "That if I worked hard enough, earned enough, I could protect the people I loved. But when my daughter got sick, I realized how wrong I was." He glanced at Maya, who stood a few steps away, trying not to cry. It wasn't money that saved her. It was compassion. It was patience. It was a nurse who reminded me that sometimes strength means letting your guard down. He paused, his voice catching slightly. "Maya didn't just heal my daughter. She healed something in me, too. And I'll never forget that. The audience applauded, some wiping tears. Maya smiled modestly, embarrassed by the attention but deeply moved. Then Ethan turned back to her and said, "There's one more thing." He gestured toward a small easel covered with a white cloth. When the hospital director unveiled it, the words gleamed in gold. The Maya Thompson Children's Wellness Foundation, dedicated to holistic care and family-centered healing. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide. "Ethan, what? It's not charity," he said quickly. "It's partnership. You've spent your life helping others find hope. I want to make sure you can keep doing that, on your terms." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I don't know what to say. Just keep being you," he replied softly. "That's more than enough." That evening, when the crowd was gone, Maya stopped by Lily's room one last time. The little girl was half asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Ethan stood beside the bed, watching her with quiet tenderness. "She'll be fine now," Maya said. "Because you finally showed up." Ethan smiled, emotion tightening his throat. "You're the one who showed me how." As she turned to leave, he reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder, the same way she had steadied him months ago when his world was collapsing. There was no hierarchy now, no distance between billionaire and nurse, just mutual respect, gratitude, and an unspoken bond forged through fear, faith, and the kind of courage that changes people forever. Maya walked down the hall, her figure fading into the soft hospital light. And for the first time since his wife's death, Ethan felt something close to peace, a rebirth not just for his daughter, but for himself. A year later, the hospital grounds looked nothing like the place Ethan once knew. The cold white walls had been transformed with color, murals of smiling suns, painted rainbows, and children holding hands surrounded the entrance of the new Lily Carter Foundation for Family-Centered Care. The air rang with laughter, the sound of life returning to a place once marked by fear. Ethan stood near the ribbon-cutting podium, dressed simply in a charcoal suit. Beside him, Lily, now bright-eyed and healthy, clutched his hand and waved shyly to the small crowd gathered. Cameras flashed, but for once, Ethan didn't care about appearances. He wasn't here to be seen. He was here to give thanks. Maya walked through the crowd, her white coat catching the light. She was no longer just a nurse. She now led the hospital's pediatric compassion training program, mentoring others in the same empathy that had changed Ethan's life. When Lily spotted her, she ran forward, wrapping her arms around Maya's waist. "Miss Maya, Daddy says this place is for kids like me." Maya smiled, her voice soft. "It's for brave ones like you, sweetheart." When the speeches began, Ethan took the stage, pausing for a long moment before he spoke. "I used to think money could fix everything," he began, his voice low but strong. "Then a nurse taught me that love is the real cure." Applause filled the courtyard. Maya's eyes glistened, but she smiled through the tears. Later, when the ceremony ended, Ethan slipped away to Lily's old hospital room, now converted into a small reading nook with shelves of children's books and warm lamps. He placed a single white rose on the windowsill beside a framed drawing, a crayon sketch from Lily showing 3 stick figures, Daddy and Miss Maya, the ones who made me brave. He looked at it for a long time, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for showing me how to be her father." From behind him, Maya's gentle reply, "And thank you for proving love still heals the richest hearts." Ethan turned, smiling, as Lily's laughter echoed from the hallway. Hand in hand, father and daughter stepped into the sunlight, no longer bound by fear or pride, but walking forward, whole again.